Hello, I'm Molly Holly, and by the end of this video, you'll be able to turn your dreams into actions. I love daydreaming, I love imagining, I love big visions, but I found that I'm also really good at turning those big visions into actionable steps, into habits and tasks that are manageable, achievable, that help me achieve those visions, that help me make those visions a reality as opposed to just a nice image on a Pinterest board. There are the big picture thinkers, and then there are the people that love the details, that get into the details. And then there are the people that can go between both. You might be one of these people who can understand the big picture and then understand what tasks are required to achieve that big picture. You might be someone that can see how the details connect to the greater mission, to the greater purpose. This concept is not random. It's called the hierarchy of ideas. It's why sometimes some things seem ambiguous when others seem almost too dry and detailed. It's because they're at different layers of our thinking. And if we spend too much time in one or the other, then we don't get the inspiration and the fulfillment and the joy and excitement that comes from visions and dreams. But we also don't get the tangible progress and the feeling of momentum that comes from actions. And some of the most influential people are the ones that really can connect the dots, that can ask questions like, okay, well, what specifically is required here? Or what's the purpose of that? Because when you can connect the dreaming to the doing, that's when it feels like you're on purpose. That's when it feels like the daily grind actually means something and that you're actually working towards that purpose, that vision, that goal that you've been dreaming about for so long. And so my vision for you is that you're able to take that big idea you have and turn it into actionable steps to see that it is so much more possible than you imagined, to get out of the weeds of the busy work and realize what actually is getting you closer to the things that you are so excited for in your life. In this video, I'm going to step you through the process that I use to go from vision to goal to project to task and habits. You can either watch the video to the end and then come back and step through it, or you can just work through it with me. So first, you want to start with the vision, because the vision is the destination. It's the big picture. It's the vision you have and the desire you have for your life. Are you going to the mountains? Or are you going to a forest? With a nice stream, maybe. Do you like my drawings? Even if you're someone that's like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I don't know what direction. I just don't know. The thing is, you probably have an idea of what you want your life to look like, what you desire your life to feel like, what you want involved in your life, what you want included in your life. It's just that idea about what you want your life to be doesn't seem possible. And so you kind of block it or don't allow yourself to believe that that is the direction you're heading, that is the destination you can get to. And so with the vision, just allow yourself to dream bigger, to immerse your imagination in what it would feel like and look like and sound like to be living that life that you desire. What would be there? What would be included? Who would you be with? Where would you be? What would you feel like? What would you look like? This is not the step where you try and figure out the specifics or the numbers or the measurable or anything like that. This is the step where you literally imagine, where you dream. It's the step where you get excited and inspired. And so pause the video, close your eyes, take a moment and step forward into your future. Step forward into a time and place in your future that you want to exist, that you want to exist on your timeline. If your visions are something you really want to spend more time with before I continue on, I do have a free vision board template you can download. And it's also a process that I'll go through in more detail in my upcoming workshop, where I actually have time to spend with you to really visualize and connect to that vision. And so once you have an idea about what your life looks and feels like, the qualities, like I like to think of intentions and words even. Next, we can move on to the goals. And the goals are more like the road, not the destination. I think this is where a lot of people get mixed up, is they think the goal is the destination, when really it's the road, it's how we get to the destination. Because even with a goal, once you achieve it, you're always like moving on to the next thing. So it's never actually a destination. It never feels like you actually arrive at a goal. And I don't think we need to. I think it's okay to have a goal that you are always working towards or you surpass, because it's the road. Once you're on the road, you stop thinking about being on the road, but you need to decide what road to get on to start with, right? Particularly if it's a straight road. So this is a very clear goal. You kind of start to forget about it. It's a specific number, and it's very obvious what that goal is. However, if the road's bumpy, full of rocks and obstacles, and you're not really sure where you're actually meant to be driving, you can spend a long time thinking about it. And similar to a road, it could actually take you a lot longer. It may be a lot more fun. You may have more of an adventure. Because if you had set the goal first and you started on this bumpy road, and then you realized when you got close to the mountains that you actually wanted to go to the forest, this whole time you could have actually just gone on the straight road. And a really good goal, I find, is one that has a specific number, a specific target, not because you won't achieve the goal if you don't, but it just makes the next step easier. And that's why I still bother with goals, is not because the goal itself is so important in this process, but it does connect that vision, that imagination to the actual actions, which I'll get to in the next step, which are the projects and the tasks. And so having a goal with a specific number, say dollars earned, weight lost, minutes run, days spent, these kinds of things, create that more straight and narrow road to figure out what the projects are going to be, and then to figure out what projects are actually helping you get closer to that goal, which is helping you get closer to that vision. And so the examples with health are really obvious. Weight lost, weight lifted, minutes run, kilometers run. Even if your vision for health includes nourishing foods, eating what you want, working out when you want, allow that to still be the vision. Just keep the vision as it is in that beautiful, exciting way. But then now step down to the goal. Remember, hierarchy of ideas. We've got the bigger purpose, and now we're getting a bit more specific, a bit more tangible. So with the goal, have a number. Like, if you are trying to lose weight, it's okay to put weight lost. It's a target. If you are trying to run a marathon, it's good to put, minutes or kilometers run, because that's the goal, really. I used to have weight lost, and now my goal is weight lifted. And so I know that the projects and habits I have in regards to my fitness are going to be more focused towards weight lifted as opposed to weight lost. Again, with wealth, it's probably the easiest of all because it's a dollar amount, right? But the options you could do for that are total amount earned, monthly amount earned, a certain amount within 1 month or 1 year, or a reoccurring amount, whatever it is that you are working towards. So now pick one of those goals and we'll move on to projects. So projects is the step, I suppose, that I never see associated with goals, right? You've got goals for projects, but I don't really hear anyone talking about projects for goals, right? And everything out there to do with projects is these advanced project management, complicated, finance, legal. It doesn't need to be that complicated. There are some very basic phases within a project, which is why I really like using projects as opposed to going directly to tasks when thinking about how to achieve a goal. Because the thing is, with a goal, it's going to be, hopefully it's big, so it's going to kind of take a while. And when you're in week 2 of your task and your habits, and you're wondering why you're not a whole lot closer to your goal, that's where things start getting unmotivating and you start to wonder if you're doing the right thing or if you're ever going to get there, or why the results as significant as I thought they would be after doing the habit 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Me, every single week. So projects are more like tangible chunks, right? Because you get to the end of a project, and at the end of the day, you're going to need to do projects to achieve a goal. If you have a very flat and straight road, you don't need a very good car. You're going to get there with an average car. With bald tires. Maybe it's very low to the ground, so it can't handle bumps in the road very well. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more comfortable if this is actually a sports car versus a beat-up sedan. But either way, you need a vehicle that's fit for this road. Because if you're driving over here, having a big four-wheel drive with mud tires, drive on these kinds of roads, not very fast, but a lot better. And they're very inefficient on a road like this. And so again, once you have an idea of your destination, which is your vision, the goal, which is the road you're going to drive on, then you need to decide on the project. What vehicle are you going to use to actually drive on that road? If it's money to do with business, for example, you're going to have a lot of projects regarding business revenue, whether it's creating a product and then selling it, whether it's like launch campaigns or content campaigns. Even when it comes to health, if you are just starting out getting into health, whether it's improving your fitness, improving your health, the first phase, even with that, is going to be a research and learning phase. Same with creating a project, you need the research phase. And then I guess back to health, sorry to keep jumping around. So you have the project and learning phase, even with a health journey, when you're wanting to improve your diet, when you're wanting to change your workouts, when you're wanting to lose weight. And then you have the build or practice phase, right? So with health, you're researching and learning about what it is you actually want to do or need to do. Then you actually practice next. You don't just get into expert mode. You're actually practicing and experimenting and figuring out what workouts are actually going to work for you, what diets are actually going to work for you, as opposed to going in full steam ahead. This diet is the thing, the one thing. I swear, the amount of times I'm like, oh, this is the one thing that will work. This is the one. There's never just one thing. Never just one thing. So we need the practice phase. The practice phase. We need the practice phase so that you can actually experiment and practice doing the things you learn to figure out if that's what you want to create your system around, right? Again, same with, let's say, a product for a business. You kind of need to build the product, right? You do the research to figure out if it's worth building, and then you build the product before you scale it. I know there's a lot of advice out there telling you to scale it before you build it, but at some point you're still going to need to build it and then scale it. And so if we're talking about one clear project, right? So building and selling a certain product is one clear project. You have the research and learning phase, and then you have the build or experiment phase. And then once you've tested, well, I guess you could have the testing phase as well. Sometimes I just put that into the build phase because you're testing and building at the same time. And then you have the scale or marketing or launch phase after that. And then you can decide what would be considered the end of that project. So that's the other key part, is once you've figured out what project you want to do, what the phases are, you also need to figure out what the end of that project looks like. Does it end on a specific date, or does it end when specific outcomes have been achieved? And for your own sanity, please put an ending to the project. You need to know there's a completion and an end date, even if let's say again with a product, I'm keep getting project and product mixed up. say with a program or an offer, the actual marketing campaign of that program could be a completely different project. If it requires, different skills, different people, different processes, different systems, then it can be its own project. And so for developing a program, again, you'd have the research, you'd have the build, and then I guess you could have the testing until it's market ready. And then you could decide that, okay, market ready is the end of that project. And so the start of the next project, the marketing campaign, is once it's market ready, because in a way you kind of need to do a bit of research for the marketing campaign if you haven't already started that. And then you would get into the, development of the marketing assets, and then you obviously launch that marketing. With health, the way this would work is, again, if you're starting out with health, if you've already been on a health journey for a while and you're just kind of like pivoting, you probably won't really have as much of the learn and research phase. And again, when I say each of these phases, it'll make more sense when we get to the next step with the task and habits. But each of these phases don't need to last like weeks. Like, you could do the research and learning in 1 day or 1 hour. It's just when you set the first task as to create, when you find yourself having to constantly look up things and actually figure out what you're doing, then you start to feel unproductive, when really what you've missed out on is that first phase 0, I suppose. In Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about systems. Projects is where you figure out what system you need, because each different project is going to have different systems. And when you use projects for goals and kind of break it up like this, you have that satisfaction of progress and completion, because as you complete each phase, you can feel the momentum and progress of completing that project. And then when you can complete the project, you feel a whole lot closer to the goal, even if you haven't actually achieved that goal yet. And if any of these examples aren't relevant to you, or you feel like you have a lot of questions, either ask them in the comments and I'll respond, or you might want to sign up to the waitlist for my workshop, where I'm going to walk you through this whole process. It'll be live. You'll be able to ask me questions. You'll be able to ask me your examples and get my thoughts and brainstorm, what's the best project goal for you. So have a look at those links. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next and final step, which is tasks and habits. So we've stepped down the hierarchy of ideas from the vision to the goal to the projects to now to the most tangible and achievable, which is the tasks and habits. And so to me, the difference, I guess, between tasks and habits is that tasks are just that. They're just, you do them and they're complete. Habits, I suppose, are just reoccurring tasks. And so at this point, it might start to feel that that big vision of yours is actually achievable and possible, because we figured out the goal, we figured out the project. And now when you're looking at that project, already the project hopefully looks pretty achievable. And so now it's just mapping out the tasks that you need to do to complete that project. And this is why I like the research and learning phase, because if you actually don't know what tasks are required for that project, that's fine. Just put, I guess, the first 3 tasks for that project within the research and learning phase, so you can actually set yourself a task to figure out what task you need. I do this all the time. Like at the end of a phase in a project, I will put the task to figure out what tasks are needed for the next phase in that project. And so really with this step, it is literally taking the time to list out all the tasks and habits in your mind. I would say whatever works best for you, but for me, the way I do it is I literally list everything that's on my mind. I figure out what phase it goes in, and then I just get to work on the first lot of tasks. And then the tasks and habits are not you with the steering wheel, but the tasks and habits are the pedals. Are you speeding up or are you slowing down? I want to art award for my stick figures, so don't laugh. Because you need the tasks and the habits to move the project along the goal towards the vision. To give you some examples of the full process, I've recently started a software startup with one of my good friends who's a developer, who's the co-founder. And so for that business, initially I had the vision of what it would look like when the software was, being used by everyone, when it was connecting the people it needed to connect, when I was working with my co-founder and we were creating a team of people that we wanted to work with. So that was the vision. It was like I could feel it, I could see it. I was so excited around going nationwide, going global. And so because that was the vision, the goal was a mixture of things. So literally the first goal was MVP, minimum viable product development, because that in itself is a whole journey. So the first goal was MVP development. The next goal is users or user accounts for that. So the goal is super simple. It's literally, develop the app, get a certain amount of users. And then I forgot to mention, I actually like to layer my goals. It's also something I'll go into more detail in my workshop. But essentially I like to put layers to my goals as opposed to one specific number. But so the layers are literally user accounts created. So that's the goal. And then the project is a few different projects. We've got the app development project, and then we've got the marketing project. And so with the app development project, there was the research phase, of course. Then there was we've got the build phase, which is made up of mini phases. So this is really your project doesn't need to be this complicated. I'll give you a more simpler version in a second. But for the bigger projects, the build phase had multiple layers. So we had the branding phase, the design phase, and now the actual coding phase. And then we'll have the testing phase. And so once that testing has been completed by minimum 10 people, then that is that project over, and I can move on to the next project, which is the marketing and launch phase. And you can see how each of these projects are inching me closer towards that goal of users created. Another example, hopefully this one's a lot simpler, and this is my wealth building journey, not how I recommend everyone do it, but this is just what has worked for me. And essentially my vision is that I would have enough money to live off for at least 6 to 12 months. So I could do what I want. I could leave my job, not be so reliant on the job, and go full-time within my business. So that was the vision, which, hint, I'm actually living right now. So this process works. But that was the vision like 18 months ago. And so the goal was to reach a certain amount of dollars in either savings and or investments by a certain time. Actually, I didn't have a time frame initially, but I just wanted to reach a certain amount before I made a decision about whether I wanted to stay at my job or not. At the time, I knew nothing about investing. So initially I was researching, do I want to go low risk, high risk, crypto, stocks, all this kind of thing. And then the next was a little bit of experimenting. So putting a little bit of money in different locations to see how I responded to it, how the market responded, just kind of figuring out what was working for me and what wasn't in the time frame, my goals, the whole thing. So that was the experiment phase. And then I suppose what you could call the scaling phase of that project was to then set up my account so it would automatically send money to whichever of the either investment accounts or savings accounts that I wanted my money to go into. And so that essentially was one project for one particular goal of reaching that amount of money saved or invested that I could easily access. And why that's important is because if I had gone straight to the scaling phase of allocating my money to different accounts, which you can totally do, but I might have been putting a bunch of money in an account that I actually realized I really didn't want it in there. Whereas instead I did the research and experimentation. And so by the time I got to the point of setting up that system of having the money automatically sent after I got paid, it was like set and forget. Like I was happy with it. I didn't need to keep checking in to figure out. I mean, I of of course, kept checking in because I like to track, but I actually didn't need to. And so now, if you've been following along, you probably have a whole lot written down. And what I don't want you to do is to spend forever on a project management tool trying to organize everything. You can, of course, go ahead and organize the information, but really get started on that immediate action that you know you need to do today, tomorrow, that will start to make you feel like you're actually working towards that vision. Because it can be so easy to watch a video like this, to do all the planning and get excited while you're doing the planning, but then to look at all that information, think, oh my God, it's so much work to, put this into a template. Side note, of course, if you come to my workshop, I will provide a template for you so you can easily input that information, but just don't get caught up organizing everything and then not actually doing anything. Just get started on those immediate actions, those habits, that research, learn phase, that experiment phase. It's okay if it feels clunky. It's okay if it feels awkward. Get into the momentum of completion. Get into the momentum of being someone that completes and follows through. I like to set, 3 tasks a day. If you find that initially, if it feels like there is a lot to do, then I just list what are the top 3? What are the top 3 things I need to do today? Because then when I complete those top 3, first of all, you have that satisfaction of achievement. And then you can move on to the next 3 and it starts to seem like, okay, yes, there's a lot, but I'm working through them pretty well. So I always get to a point mid-project where I'm like, okay, this is really hard. I feel like I'm doing a lot, but I'm not seeing the results. This is normal. This is why I love projects so much, because it's like, okay, just finish the project. Just get to the end of the project and then I can ask myself all these disempowering questions of, is it even worth it? Should I continue? Am I good enough? Not making fun of you. This is literally, I did that yesterday and I had to give myself a pep talk about just finish the project. Just finish the project. Just get to the end of those few weeks. This is why I mentioned having a clear completion indicator, I suppose, because then it's like, just get to that point. And then I can decide what to do next. I can decide whether this is something I want to continue with, if this is a goal that's really worth the effort. Because you'll find once you have that feeling of completion, you'll be reignited with the motivation to go again, to think of another project, to get a little bit closer to that goal and get even closer to that vision. Because what I want most for you is not to just have great ideas, but to actually turn them into reality, to turn them into businesses, to movements, to things that you can tangibly experience, to get to a point where you're living your vision and you can one day look back and think, that was that one thing. So this is just the start of the journey. If you found that process helpful, first, like the video, send it to someone who you think will also like it. And yeah, sign up for the workshop waitlist. It's going to be so good. Yes, I go through this process with you, but I also include visualizations, hypnosis, breath work. Will I include breath work? I'll probably include breath work, yeah. So this workshop, I'm going to cap at 10 people. I know, not a lot. It's really important to me that you all get the results you came for. So sign up to the waitlist and then you'll get first access. Thanks for watching and I'll catch you next time.